Welcome back to Ralph's Sorta True Stories. You know, in the last segment we were talking about my secretary, Trixie. We're not going to talk about Trixie anymore. We're going to talk about some other blondes that have come into my life. The first time was kind of an innocent situation. I was just walking into this 7-Eleven store, and I noticed the newspaper rack outside had a big headline. It said, 7 Brazilians killed in jungle fight. So I went in and got my stuff. Well, walking right in behind me was this blonde, nice looking lady. So I paid for my stuff and I was getting ready to leave, and she walked up to the counter to pay for her stuff, and she says to the clerk, "Pardon me, sir, can you tell me how many is in a Brazilian?" Ran into another situation like that with foreign information. Lady came up to me and she says, I know that the exchange rate is $1.11 for a euro, and I'm going to the Union of South Africa on vacation. Do you know what the exchange rate is on afros? Don't think she quite caught on to that right. But speaking of foreign travel, I was over in London, and they have those big double-decker buses, and some of them are the hop-on, hop-off. I hopped on this one, and on the bottom floor, apparently this was a big group of cheerleaders that had been traveling together. Well, for some reason, all the brunettes were on the bottom, and they were having a great old time. They were laughing and they were singing. So I went upstairs because I always like to sit on the top deck of a double-decker. And all the blondes are up there, and they're very quiet, and they're holding on to their seats real tight. And I went up to one of them and I said, "Excuse me," I says, all those ladies downstairs seem to be having a really good time, and you guys up here seem to be very quiet and somber. And she looks at me, she says, "Yeah, but down there they have a driver." Well, I told you that these are sort of true stories. Well, this one is absolutely not true, but it could become true. The reason it's not true is it involves Dolly Parton and Queen Elizabeth II going to heaven. Now, we know, both of them are still among the living, but imagine that it could happen. So Dolly Parton and Queen Elizabeth II go up, and they're standing in front of St. Peter. And St. Peter says, "We've got a little bit of a problem. We really shouldn't have called you both this early. As it turns out, we have a little bit of an overcrowding situation, and I only have room for one of you. So if you can tell me a story or do something that gives me a reason to pick you over the other, I'd be interested to hear it." And Dolly Parton walks up and she goes, "Well, St. Peter, look at these girls. Look at these girls. These are God's creations. Aren't they lovely? Don't you think God himself would love to see these?" In the meantime, Queen Elizabeth watches. She walks over right next door. There's a restroom. And she walks in, leaves the door open, she flushes the toilet, and she walks back out. And St. Peter says, "Okay, Queen Elizabeth is the winner. Your Majesty, you may enter heaven." And Dolly Parton says, Hey, what's going on here? What about these? What about these girls?" "Well, Dolly, even up here in heaven, a royal flush beats a pair no matter how big they are." So I guess Dolly may come back and rejoin us if this should ever happen. Now, a girl down in Marfa, Texas, it was. I was down there. It's West Texas. It's kind of an interesting little town. There was this blonde that looked a lot like Dolly Parton. She had, of course, all girls in Texas, not all, but they're known as big hair girls. So she has big hair, and she's got big breasts, and she goes into the hairdresser. All the other ladies are in there. She says, "I finally decided that I need to get a job. Do any of you ladies know anybody around here that's hiring?" And one of them says, "Well, I know the sheriff over there across the street is looking for a new receptionist, but I understand it's quite an interview process." She says, "Oh, I'm on my way. I'm going to get that job. I'm going to get that job today." Well, she goes over there and she walks in and, I'm here for my new job. And the sheriff says, well, I have a little bit of an interview process, but he's already sized her up as a little bit of an airhead. So he says, I'll start off with some easy questions. Can you tell me what's 1 and 1? She said 11. He says, 1 and 1's 11. Yeah, you put the 1 and the 1 together and it makes 11. He said, well, I guess, that does make a certain amount of sense. All right, name 2 days of the week that start with T. She said, oh, that's easy, today and tomorrow. He said, well, I guess, again, technically, you're right. One other question, he says, can you tell me who assassinated President Lincoln? Well, I guess I don't rightly know. The sheriff says, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you figure that out and get back to me? So she says, okay. And she goes running back to the hair salon, and she walks in and she says, I got the job. I said, you got that job already? She says, I not only got the job already, they've got me working on a murder case. I understand that she went back, and the sheriff felt a little sorry for her and said, all right, I got one more question. The famous Captain Cook, the naval explorer, explored the Pacific Ocean on 3 different trips, and he died on one of them. Which trip did he die on? And she said, She says, I'm really not very good at history questions. Why don't you ask me another one? So I think Captain Cook probably died on the last one, but that's just me, even though I also am blonde, as you can see. Well, thank you for watching Ralph's Sorta True Stories. And hurry back, we're going to have another segment that has to do with blondes that I have known. And in the meantime, if you haven't already, go down there to the bottom. There's a place to click on a thumbs up. And next to that on the right is subscribe. And next to that's a little bell. You click on that. And when we load that next segment, we'll send you a notification. And thank you again for watching Ralph's Sorta True Stories.